There is one seller on earth that never haggles, never markets, and never cares what it gets. It holds seized supercars, foreclosed houses, retired police trucks, confiscated jewelry, surplus aircraft, and pallets of unclaimed everything. And it wants all of it gone, fast, for whatever a stranger will pay on a Tuesday afternoon. That seller is the government, federal, state, county, and city. And you can buy from it. You have probably heard the pitch. Buy a $40,000 truck for $8,000. A house below the median price of the street it sits on. Office gear, boats, land, at a steep discount. All because the most motivated seller in the country just needs it off the books. It sounds like the easiest arbitrage in America. Buy cheap from a seller who does not care. Sell at market to someone who does. And pocket the spread forever. It is not. And the reason is hidden inside the two words that describe where all this stuff comes from: seized and surplus. So let us open the whole ledger, where a government auction business actually gets its inventory, and the uncomfortable truth about half of it. What you are really buying when you buy something as is from the state. Why the platforms make more reliable money than most of the bidders do. And why the biggest risk in this business is not the item. It is the paper attached to it. Start with the supply, because this is one of the largest liquidation machines on the planet. The government sells through auction sites, most of them online now. Two big categories describe it. Exactly those two words. Surplus is the easy one. It is the stuff the government bought, used, and no longer needs. Retired fleet vehicles, old office furniture, outdated computers, worn-out equipment, buildings it no longer wants. Every city, county, state, and federal agency is constantly replacing things, and the old things have to go somewhere. Scale here is staggering. One large platform for state and local surplus posted more than $900 million in sales in a single recent fiscal year, and has crossed $15 billion in total sales over its life, with more than 6 million registered buyers. On the federal side, the General Services Administration alone moves over $500 million in surplus assets every year. This is a river of goods, flowing constantly, and it never stops, because the government never stops buying and replacing. Now the second word, seized. And this is where the story gets uncomfortable, and where you have to understand something before you build a business on it. Some of what the government sells, it did not buy, it took. Through a legal process called asset forfeiture, law enforcement can seize property connected to a crime. Cars, cash, jewelry, boats, even houses. And once that property is forfeited, the government can sell it. Those proceeds often flow back to the agencies involved. Here is the part reasonable people argue about, and you should know both sides. Supporters say forfeiture is a powerful tool that strips criminals of their profits, and has returned billions of dollars to victims, including the money clawed back from major fraudsters. Critics across the political spectrum say the civil version of this, where the case is against the property itself rather than a convicted person, lets the government take assets from people who are never charged with any crime, and creates an incentive to police for profit. There are active, bipartisan efforts in Congress to reform it. That debate is real, and it is ongoing. You do not have to resolve it to understand the business. But you do have to understand this. When you buy a seized car at a government auction, you are buying the far end of that entire machine. And how you feel about standing at that end is a question only you can answer. Now, the buy-in. What does it cost to do this as a business? Almost nothing, which is exactly why the internet is full of people selling courses about it. You do not need a dealer license for most items. You do not need a business, a storefront, or any government connection. You register on the auction platform, usually for free, and you bid. That is the entire barrier. And that low barrier is the first clue that this is harder than it looks. Because if it were free money, everyone would already be rich. So what are you actually buying when you win? This is where the fantasy meets the fine print. You are buying it as is. No warranty, no returns, no test drive, often no keys. Sometimes you are bidding on nothing more than a few photographs and a one-line description written by a government clerk who is not a car expert, or a jewelry expert, or an expert in anything except moving inventory off a list. That surplus police truck sounds like a steal, but it was a fleet vehicle, which means it ran hard for years, idled for thousands of hours, and was maintained to the minimum. That seized luxury car might have sat in an impound lot for a year with a dead battery and flat tires, and it may come with no service history at all. No one fixes anything. Nobody details anything. It hands you exactly what it took or retired, in exactly the condition it is in. And the moment you win, every problem is yours. And you inherit the logistics too. You usually have to pay in full immediately, and then physically collect the item from wherever the agency is holding it, often within a week or two, at your own cost. Win a boat 2 states away, and you are now paying to transport a boat 2 states away, before you have earned a single dollar. So let us run the ledger on a real flip. Say you win that surplus truck for $8,000. On the revenue side, if it is really worth $15 at retail, you have a real margin. Now the costs nobody mentions. Start with the buyer premium, which on many platforms adds another 10 or more % on top of your winning bid. Then the transport to go get it. Then the repairs it needs to be sellable. New battery, new tires, brakes, whatever the government lets slide. Then the cleaning. Then the time to list it, field buyers, and close a sale. And the risk that when you actually inspect it in person, it is worse than the photos suggested and your margin evaporates. On a good unit, the spread survives all of that. On a bad one, the $8,000 truck needs $4,000 in work and sells for $11,000, and you made almost nothing for a month of effort. Now here is the number that tells you who actually wins in this whole ecosystem. It is the platforms. Think about it. An auction site does not buy a single truck. It does not gamble on a single seized car. It takes a percentage of every sale, from the government on one side and often the buyer on the other, no matter who wins the bid or whether that bidder makes a cent reselling it. One of the biggest of these platforms reported over $900 million in sales in a year. It earns its cut on all of it, risk-free, while thousands of individual bidders fight over whether their particular truck was a deal or a trap. Listen to that again. In the government auction business, the reliable money is not in buying the assets, it is in running the auction. The house wins, the way the house always wins, by taking a fee on other people's bets, instead of placing its own. So where does that leave the individual flipper? Because people do make real money here, just not the way the courses promise. Survivors treat this as a specialist trade, not a treasure hunt. First, they pick one narrow category and master it completely. Not everything, one thing, government fleet trucks, or heavy equipment, or a specific kind of electronics. They learn that category so well, they can read a bad photo and a vague description and know, within a few $100s, what the item is really worth and what it will cost to fix. Depth beats breadth every single time. Second, they inspect in person whenever they possibly can, because the entire edge in this business is knowing what a distant, careless seller does not. A bidder who drives to the lot and looks under the hood beats the bidder clicking blindly from his couch, every time. Third, they price in every hidden cost before they bid. Premium, transport, repairs, time. They set a hard maximum that already subtracts all of it, and they do not chase a unit $1 past that number, because the auction is designed to make you emotional, and the winner is often just the person who lost their discipline. Fourth, they have a real resale channel, and they understand the paper. On vehicles, that means titles. A surplus vehicle usually comes with a clean government title, but a seized one can come with complications, liens, missing documentation, a salvage brand. An experienced buyer knows that the most dangerous part of any government auction is not the condition of the thing. It is whether the paperwork lets you legally sell it again. Get the title wrong, and you own a dirt-cheap object you cannot flip at all. So does owning a government auction business actually work? Run both years. The good year. You know you're one category cold. You buy surplus, mostly. So the titles are clean and the story is simple. You inspect before you bid, you win below true value, you fix cheap, and you sell into a channel you already control. Government keeps replacing its fleet forever, so your supply never runs dry. And in a downturn it actually grows, because hard times mean more defaults, more foreclosures, and more seizures flowing to auction. Done with discipline, this is a lean, durable, real profitable trade. The bad year. You bid on everything, blind, from your couch. You win a scattered pile of items you do not really understand, half of them worse in person than in the photos. Premiums and transport eat your margins. One vehicle turns out to have a title problem you cannot clear, so it just sits in your yard, unsellable. And the occasional good flip is not enough to cover all the mediocre ones and the one disaster. You are not running a business. You are paying the government and the platform for an expensive education. So the honest verdict, A government auction business is real, and the supply behind it is one of the biggest and most reliable on earth. But it is a specialist trade, wearing a treasure hunter's costume. An edge does not come from access, because access is free and everyone has it. It comes from knowing one narrow thing better than a careless seller, pricing in every hidden cost, and never, ever getting the paperwork wrong. Master that, and the government becomes a supplier that never runs out. Skip it, and you become one more bidder funding the only guaranteed winner in the room, which is the auction itself. Here is the thing to remember. The next time you see an ad promising government cars for a fraction of their value, that price on the screen was never the real price. It is the opening line of a much longer bill, and the government is the one seller on earth that will never, ever tell you what the rest of it costs. You are not buying a bargain from a careless giant. You are buying the right to find out, at your own expense, exactly why it was so cheap.